Hey everyone, today I'm reviewing The Downward Spiral by Nine Inch Nails. The Downward Spiral is about an hour long and 14 songs, and I feel like it can be very categorized or split up into different parts. I think the first 6 songs are very much about our main character of the album's outlook towards how the rest of the world sees him and how he sees the rest of the world. Then we have our 7th song, which is the beginning of like this transformation that our character goes through. The rest of the tracks are basically from there to his death, and that's the whole album. The album is definitely a concept album, and you would never believe this, but the concept of the album, called The Downward Spiral, is about the character's downward spiral. I know it blew me away too. I was so surprised. I like the first track a lot, Mr. Self-Destruct. First off, because it goes hard as fuck, but also because it really introduces the main kind of idea of the album. In my opinion, I kind of interpreted it as Mr. Self-Destruct is the voice in our main character's head, the thoughts fueling the main character's motivation, hence the name Mr. Self-Destruct. The entire purpose of the album is kind of just showing this character's downward spiral through just the abuse of drugs, him trying to battle his depression and thoughts. He doesn't really try to fight them. He more as just kind of gets to the point where he's so deep and down the spiral where he just starts like accepting it and almost like embracing it and just trying to go even further. Eventually though, there is a 180 near the end of the album where it pushes him so far where he kills himself and he realizes that he's made mistakes like a lot. Now, as I mentioned before, the first 6 tracks feel like more of what he sees of the outside world. And the first 6 tracks are probably the more normal songs. I say normal in very broad terms. The more of they hit hard. They're this weird mix of like electronic and like industrial rock music. And they're pretty good. They go pretty hard. I don't like love all of them, but I feel like most of them are good. My favorites are probably Closer and Ruiner. Also, March of the Pigs is 2 minutes and it's a banger. It goes super hard. And I feel like it's a good contrast to the second half of the album that feels a lot more slower, kind of. It's the second half is much tonally more all over the place compared to the first in terms of just sound. The 7th track, The Becoming, I don't particularly enjoy, if I'm being honest, and that applies to a lot of songs from the 7th track onwards. I don't particularly enjoy them. I really appreciate the concept of it, and I like the album's concept and kind of story a lot, but I don't particularly enjoy the sound that much. The Becoming is definitely the start of the end, or you could say like the transitional part of our story. Or the character, the Mr. Self-Destruct like persona slash thing in the main character's head is taking over the main character. It's fully became him. And from this point on, we go straight into the next song, Big Man with a Big Gun, which just shows like the minute it happened, he's already just fucking off of everything. He's just completely let go of everything and is just going completely wild. Eventually though, this is going to lead to the end. I really like A Warm Place. That's the next song in the album, and I find it really comforting. It's genuinely one of my favorite songs in the album. It's a 3-minute instrumental, which in my mind I kind of saw it as maybe like when the character is sleeping or maybe when the character is high. It's almost like a moment of rest where the voices are not in his head. There is nothing in his head. It's just peace. I like it a lot because it is just a very peaceful instrumental. And then the next song immediately gets rid of that, and it's one of the more loud songs in the second half of the album. Now, truth be told, I appreciate Eraser and Reptile's place on the album, but I don't really like the tracks like at all. I think they're kind of whatever, and by far the weakest songs on the entire album. I think Reptile, it shows his kind of final thoughts before he finally, on the self-titled track, kills himself. And that's what the self-titled track is. It's literally him killing himself. It's haunting. It's kind of crazy. You're hearing the singer Trent Reznor's literal, he's just talking about how shooting himself has felt, like how he's processing it, while you in the very distance hear him blood curdling screaming. And it's an insane song and probably the most interesting on the entire album. And of course the final track is Hurt. It is probably my favorite song in the album. I feel like most people know this song. The Johnny Cash version is incredibly famous, of course. I've never listened to this version before this, and I kind of like this version a bit more. It's an incredible way to end off the album and the story, and I just find it so fucking sad, but at the same time honestly very uplifting and kind of hopeful. He wouldn't want to be a different person if he could start again. He would just try to do better as himself if he could try again, and that's what makes the final track so powerful and easily one of the best, if not the best song in the album, and I absolutely love it. Overall, I find The Downward Spiral to be a super interesting album. I I think the story that the album is trying to say is incredibly engaging throughout almost the entire time. But at the same time, I couldn't really necessarily say I love any of the songs. On the second half of the album, I like a lot of the songs that are a bit slower and feel like they focus more on progressing the story the album is saying. And I'm not a huge fan of Eraser or Reptile. I find those tracks very weak. While I do appreciate what they do to the story of the album, I think they're not interesting whatsoever. However, this album is really fantastic and I highly recommend everybody listen to it. The story is super interesting, and Hurt is probably one of the best outros I've ever heard. That being said, I'm going to give The Downward Spiral by Nine Inch Nails a 8 out of 10. That's what I thought about the album. What do you think about the album? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Tell me in the comments below, or say something else. It doesn't really matter. Recommend me more albums you'd like me to listen to. I only review what people recommend me. Feel free to join the Discord in the description. We're actually growing pretty fast. We got like 40, 50 people, which is kind of crazy. And thank you for watching, and have a good day.